Imagine being so dramatic, so over the top, so absolutely allergic to reality that you throw a state funeral for your own leg. No, not your dad, not your dog, not even your goldfish from 3rd grade. Your actual leg. Welcome to the mind of General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, the guy who lost a limb in battle and thought, "Wow, this deserves a parade." He buried his amputated leg with full military honors, a marching band, and probably some poor drummer boy wondering what his life had become. This is not satire. This is history, and it only gets worse from here. Welcome to 10 historical figures who were completely unhinged. Absolute power meets zero sanity. This is the video your high school history teacher definitely skipped. Because today, we're diving deep into the royal bathtubs of blood, banquet tables of poison, and gold-plated lunacy of the people who ran empires like toddlers hyped on sugar and absolute power. Forget boring kings with shiny hats. We're talking about the deranged ones. The kind who talk to ghosts, elect horses to office, and play war games with dolls. And no, we're not exaggerating. In fact, we're probably underselling how bonkers this is going to get. So, buckle up. Keep your arms and sanity inside the ride at all times. Things are about to get weird. Let's start slow, by which I mean mildly delusional and only partially unhinged. Number 1. King Ludwig II of Bavaria, the original Disney adult. Before there was Disneyland, there was Ludwig. King Ludwig II of Bavaria didn't just enjoy fairy tales, he lived in them. The man spent so much taxpayer money on building fantasy castles you'd think he was trying to speedrun a Sims game in real life. Neuschwanstein Castle? That ridiculously picturesque mountain palace? Yeah, he made that. For himself. As a shrine to his favorite composer, Richard Wagner, like a medieval fanboy with a bottomless credit card. And sure, building one fairy tale castle is eccentric, but Ludwig didn't stop. He kept going. Linderhof Palace, Herrenchiemsee, random grottos with artificial rainbows. The man was LARPing as a magical prince while his kingdom was teetering on bankruptcy. But wait, it gets better. Ludwig reportedly talked to imaginary friends, held dinner parties where no one else showed up, and took boat rides in underground caves lit by electric lights in the 1800s. This was a man so deep in fantasy, he made Tolkien look like a minimalist. Eventually, his government was like, maybe a king who thinks he's living in a Wagner opera shouldn't be in charge of actual humans. So they declared him insane and booted him from power. He died mysteriously a few days later, found floating face down in a lake with his psychiatrist. Cause of death? Unclear. Maybe madness, maybe murder, maybe karma for spending the entire national budget on mood lighting. 1 down, 9 to go. Let's crank the crazy dial up a notch. Number 2. General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. Leg Day was a national holiday. You remember that leg from the intro? Oh, we're not done with it yet. General Santa Anna wasn't just a war hero turned dictator, turned ex-dictator, turned war hero again. He was also the proud owner of the most over-celebrated leg in Mexican history. In 1838, during the Pastry War, yes, that was the real name, he took a cannonball to the knee. His leg had to be amputated. Most people would grieve, move on, maybe keep it in a jar as a conversation starter. Not Santa Anna. Nope, he held a funeral for it, buried it with honors, gave speeches, had military salutes. People wept for a leg. Then, because irony loves a comeback, a few years later political enemies dug it up and dragged it through the streets in protest. Yes, the leg was exhumed and publicly mocked. As for Santa Anna himself, he came back to power, then lost it again, then exiled himself to, get this, Staten Island, where he tried to start a business making chewing gum. Because when your resume says, dictator, amputee, inventor of chiclets, you've peaked. Santa Anna's real legacy? Probably teaching us all that when life gives you lemons, you host a funeral for the lemonade and start a gum empire. Let's move on before that somehow makes sense. Number 3. Emperor Nero, the human dumpster fire. Okay, Nero. If this man were alive today, he'd be a failed SoundCloud rapper with a god complex and a TikTok account where he live streams himself playing the fiddle while cities burn. Nero is best known for allegedly playing music while Rome was engulfed in flames. Which, to be fair, is only marginally worse than doing nothing. But wait, it wasn't just bad optics. Some sources say Nero may have started the fire himself so he could rebuild the city in his own image. Like the world's most unhinged interior designer, this man competed in the Olympics, rigged them, gave himself first place, and still needed to be told, "Great job, Your Majesty, for running a chariot race," where he fell off the chariot. Imagine being so bad at fake sports that you still demand a gold medal. That's Nero. He also fancied himself an actor, forced Roman elites to sit through his endless performances. Hours-long poetry readings, dramatic plays where he played every part, probably with zero talent and even less shame. Did I mention he murdered his mom? Because she criticized his sideburns or his ego, or both. Eventually, people got tired of the Emperor's Got Talent routine and revolted. Nero fled, cried a lot, then stabbed himself with help from his assistant. Because even in death, he needed someone else to do the heavy lifting. His final words? "What an artist dies in me." Sir, you were not the artist. You were the whole trash fire. Number 4. Pope Stephen VI. Weekend at Pope Yee's. So, imagine you're a pope. Your predecessor dies. You could let it go. You could be the bigger man. Or, you could dig up his corpse, dress him in robes, prop him up in a chair, and put him on trial. Yep, that actually happened. Welcome to the Cadaver Synod, a moment in history where the Catholic Church went full Halloween horror show. Pope Stephen VI hated the previous pope, Formosus, so much, he literally dug him up months after burial and put his decaying body on trial for crimes against the Church. Morality? Good taste? They dressed Formosus in full papal regalia, sat him on a throne, and assigned a deacon to speak on his behalf. The poor guy had to defend a rotting corpse from a list of made-up charges while the Pope screamed accusations like an unhinged judge in a zombie episode of Judge Judy. Surprise! The corpse lost. They stripped him of his titles, chopped off the 3 fingers he used to bless people, and threw him in the Tiber River. Even the church eventually went, "Yeah, that was a bit much." They locked up Pope Stephen, and shortly after, he was strangled in prison. Turns out, putting dead guys on trial doesn't exactly scream stable leadership. Who knew? Number 5. Tsar Peter III of Russia, commander of the toy army. Peter III. The man who ruled one of the largest empires on Earth and spent his days playing with toy soldiers. Not like war game strategy. Not simulations. Actual toys. While real geopolitical threats loomed, Peter was too busy giving daily military reviews to his little wooden army. He made his actual soldiers drill exactly like the toys, because apparently imperial policy should be based on what your action figures did the night before. One time, a soldier accidentally stepped over one of Peter's toys. Peter ordered a court-martial for stepping on a toy. That's where we're at. Also, fun fact, he worshipped Frederick the Great of Prussia like a teenage fanboy. Russia had been at war with Prussia, and Peter was like, "Actually, I love those guys. Let's switch sides." Entire war effort? Flipped? Because of a crush. His wife, Catherine the Great, looked at this walking man-child and said, "Yeah, no thanks." So she staged a coup, took the throne, and Peter mysteriously died a few days later. Cause of death? Hemorrhoidal colic, which sounds fake and definitely was fake. Moral of the story: if you're going to play with dolls, don't do it while running a nuclear-level empire. Number 6. King Charles VI of France, glass bones, paper brain. King Charles VI, also known as Charles the Mad, which is never a good nickname for a guy in charge of an entire kingdom, had a unique medical condition. He thought he was made of glass. No, seriously. He believed his body would shatter if someone touched him. He wore reinforced clothing, refused to be hugged, and avoided chairs like they were booby-trapped. This was the guy meant to lead France through the 100 Years' War. Instead, he was walking around his palace like a terrified chandelier. But that wasn't even the start. Charles also had episodes where he couldn't remember his name, or thought he was someone else, or ran screaming through the halls murdering his own men because he thought they were enemies in disguise. One time, he randomly forgot who his wife and kids were. Like full on, "Who are these strangers in my house?" Only they weren't strangers, just his actual royal family. France, being reasonable as ever, decided to just ride it out. What's a little delusional glass syndrome among monarchs? Eventually, his court propped him up as a ceremonial king while everyone else ran the country. He died of natural causes, surprisingly, which is amazing considering how many things he was afraid might break him. Honestly, same. Mondays feel that way sometimes. Number 7. Zhu Hujiao, the Ming Emperor. Tiger King, Ming Edition. Zhu Hujiao didn't really want to be emperor. What he wanted was to play shop. No, not own a shop. Pretend to own one. The literal emperor of China would disguise himself, sneak out of the Forbidden City, and open fake storefronts in the city where his servants would pretend to be customers so he could roleplay being a merchant. Imagine Jeff Bezos showing up in a trench coat to pretend he sells smoothies at a mall kiosk. That was Zhu Hujiao. But he didn't stop at shopkeeper cosplay. He built a zoo, stocked it with wild animals, including, yes, tigers. Then decided it would be fun to go tiger hunting inside his own zoo. Spoiler, one of the tigers didn't play along. Mauled him so badly he never really recovered. But even that wasn't enough to stop him from doing dumb stuff. He once disappeared for months on a fake military campaign, leaving the empire on autopilot just so he could cosplay as a general. He ruled one of the greatest civilizations on Earth like it was his personal playground. He died in his early 30s. Shocker. The tiger might have had a point. Number 8. Emperor Elagabalus. Chaos in human form. Let's talk about Elagabalus, the Roman emperor who ruled like RuPaul and Caligula had a baby raised on chaos and glitter. First, he made Rome worship his pet rock. No joke. It was a giant black meteorite he claimed was a god. He made senators bow to it, threw parades for it, built temples for it. All hail the holy space pebble. But that was just the warm-up act. Elagabalus loved shocking people. He once invited guests to a dinner party and then released wild animals into the room for fun. Imagine sitting down for soup and suddenly, boom, leopards. He'd dump rose petals from the ceiling until people suffocated. That's not an exaggeration. That's historical record. Death by flowers. He weaponized vibes. His personal life? Even wilder. He married 5 times, including one time to a male athlete, because gender norms meant nothing to him. Which, progressive? Sure. But then he'd turn around and offer money to any surgeon who could give him a sex change, in the year 220. So, yeah. Trailblazing and completely off his rocker. The Romans hated him. His grandma tried to intervene. The army got sick of his nonsense and did what the Roman army always did when mildly annoyed. Murdered him. They tossed his body in the Tiber. End of one-man chaos machine. Elagabalus. The emperor who made Rome ask, is this performance art or just a complete mental breakdown? Number 9. Sultan Ibrahim Huaid of the Ottoman Empire. The Sultanic Psycho. Let's talk about Ibrahim the Mad. It's not just a nickname, it's his whole resume. Ibrahim spent the first 23 years of his life locked in a cage. Not metaphorically. An actual room inside the palace to make sure he didn't try to steal the throne from his brother. By the time he finally did become sultan, his brain was cooked like a kebab in July. First thing he did, declare that one of his concubines, who he believed smelled bad, was clearly a witch. So he had her drowned in the Bosporus. Ah, justice. Then, to replace her, he demanded the fattest woman in the empire be brought to him. They found someone who weighed over 300 pounds. Named her Sheker Pere, meaning piece of sugar, and she became his favorite. He gave her entire palaces and showered her in jewels. Just for existing. Honestly, get you a man like that. But his paranoia only got worse. He believed the treasury was being haunted. So he had it sealed shut and refused to pay his own army. Which, pro tip, don't make the guys with swords angry. Eventually, he had 280 concubines drowned because he thought they were plotting against him. Yes, all of them, at once. His own mother finally said, "All right, enough murder pool parties," and helped orchestrate a coup. He was dethroned and strangled with a silken cord, classic Ottoman exit package. Ibrahim. Proof that locking someone in a palace cage for 2 decades is not a great way to build leadership skills. Number 10. Crown Prince Sado of Korea. The Closet Case. And finally, let's talk about Crown Prince Sado, who proves that royal parenting is complicated. Sado was the heir to the throne of 18th century Korea. He was also severely mentally ill, but therapy hadn't exactly hit the Joseon dynasty yet, so instead of treatment, he just spiraled. He developed a habit of walking around the palace with an axe, murdering random servants. Anyone who looked at him wrong? Dead. One poor eunuch got beaten with a rice paddle because he spilled water. Oh, and he also sexually assaulted everyone. Like he made his sister dress as a man just to avoid him. That's the level we're dealing with. His father, King Yongjo, had a problem. Couldn't kill him outright because, well, royal blood. But also couldn't let him keep turning the palace into a horror show. So Yongjo came up with a solution that was chef's kiss levels of disturbing. He ordered Sado to climb into a rice chest. You know, a big wooden box for storing grain. They locked it, left him inside. For 8 days. He died of suffocation, starvation, and probably a whole lot of psychological trauma. You know it's bad when locking your son in a wooden box is considered merciful. Sado's death was so shameful that the family tried to rewrite history. Too late. The rice chest lives on. And there you have it. 10 historical figures who ran entire empires, armies, and religions with the mental stability of a raccoon on meth. They weren't just eccentric. They were full-on, award-winning, fire-breathing lunatics with kingdoms, because apparently the best way to test someone's character is to give them absolute power and a suspiciously large number of tigers. So the next time your boss micromanages your lunch break, just be thankful they didn't put a corpse on trial or drown a harem over a bad dream. History, where it could be worse, isn't just a saying. It's a fact. Smash that like button if you enjoy finding out how completely insane humans can get with a little authority and no adult supervision. And subscribe for more real history that sounds made up but sadly isn't. You think modern politics is wild? Buddy, we haven't even scratched the surface.